Hey, 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 we're live, baby. Talking UFC Rio Rancho. Also wanted to talk about a little bit of the Octagon control talk from this weekend, with John Jones versus Dominic Reyes. I feel like I don't know where the term Octagon control came from. I don't know if it's something that should be eligible as part of the criteria of judging a fight because, there's a couple things, first comes first, like if a guy's moving forward, yes, that's great for that guy, but not always. It's good if nothing's happening and you're the one moving forward. Okay, then we can kind of lean towards you're the aggressor. But if one guy's moving forward, one guy's moving elusively back and side, laterally, and the guy that's moving back jabs you, and you keep coming forward, you're feinting, you're pressing him back against the cage, he hits you with a left hand. He keeps moving laterally. You keep coming forward. You're controlling the octagon, and he leg kicks you. The guy's winning the fight. The guy's winning the fight. The guy that's causing damage is winning the fight. If you land a jab and you're moving forward and this guy lands a big leg kick and it looks like it really hurt you, but your jab, kind of slipped off his forehead a little bit, the guy who lands the leg kick's winning the fight. That's how I see it. I don't understand this octagon control and how much of a role it has to play in the way these fights are judged. Yes, John Jones was for the most part 3-4-5 moving forward. I wouldn't say throughout the whole fight. I mean, first round, Dominic Reyes was coming forward, putting it on him, but John Jones did have the octagon control for the most part. But the more damaging strikes, the more activity, the more damage caused, I feel, was from Dominic Reyes, the leg kicks, the body shots, the uppercuts, the big left hands. The more effective strikes were landed by Dominic Reyes, and I feel like that should be more considered going into a judging of these fights. I don't know where that comes into play. And then you got the whole, to beat the champion, to be the champion, you gotta beat the champion. Well, of course you gotta beat the fucking champion, but you got to beat him for 3 rounds. If you beat him rounds 1, 4, 5, you won the fight. If you beat him rounds 1, 2, 3, and he kills you in round 4 and 5, unless it's 10-8, you won the fight. That's just how the fight's scored. This is the criteria. By the way, we got a Boomachino. I'm going off. But hey, I don't want to go too much into that. I do want to talk UFC Rio Rancho today and break down the card and make some picks. If you got any questions, leave them in the comment section. I'll get to those as well. I believe I have a couple of Twitter questions that I got to get to as well. But yeah, man, this octagon control stuff, this you gotta, to be the champ, you gotta beat the champ stuff has to go away, man. This is all just rumor talk, speculation talk. And yes, to some extent, like you have to beat the champ. Yeah, of course, but that doesn't mean you have to knock the guy out. That doesn't mean you have to win a unanimous decision. You could win a split decision. You could, barely squeak out 3 rounds. That's just the name of the game. That's how 3-round fights work, right? If guy wins round 1, gets beat up in round 2, dropped, but gets back up and wins round 3, he probably won the fight. It's just how it should be. But yeah, we'll talk UFC Rio Rancho. We'll get into this card here, which I'm going to look at here. Starting on the early prelims. It's actually, this card's flying under the radar a little bit. I feel like there's a lot better fights on this card than people are talking about. Once again, the UFC, they move so fast, week by week, different cards. It's hard to kind of stay on top of this and really remember what happened last week and also get excited about what's to come. Starting on the flyweights, Mark De La Rosa versus Raulian Paiva. I'm leaning more towards Paiva. Haven't seen many of his fights, but from what I have seen with Mark De La Rosa, it seems like he's just not at the top of the game. I feel like his skill set is, it's decent, but he seems to fade in fights when he comes up against tougher competition who really put it on him. Paiva has the experience advantage. You know, he has a little bit of a reach advantage in this fight as well. And let's not forget, De La Rosa's fighting on the same card of his wife. This might be a first ever as far as that goes. I'm not too sure about that. I have to look back, but you know, Paiva is coming off a knockout TKO loss to Rogerio Bontorin, who I believe is on the card as well. And that could play a role in this fight. He also lost a decision to Kai Kara France, but that was a closer fight. And Kai Kara France has displayed a lot of potential in the UFC at flyweight. So no shame in taking that loss. But I'm gonna lean towards Paiva. I think he'll get the job done by decision. I think he'll outpoint De La Rosa. De La Rosa's, taking damage in his fights. I feel like he gets hit a decent amount, and I go with Paiva by decision. Macy Chiasson was supposed to fight Nico Montano. I just recently saw that Nico Montano pulled out of the fight due to injury. Don't know what happened. That's unfortunate, but now I lean even more towards Macy Chiasson, who I was going to pick anyways. But now she's fighting a newcomer on short notice, and Macy Chiasson's a big girl at bantamweight. She's very physically imposing. She got very long reach. She got good kicks, very well rounded, good on the ground as well. And I lean towards Macy Chiasson even more now because a newcomer coming in without preparation, it's always a hard task. I'm gonna go with Macy Chiasson by finish. I think she's gonna get a TKO victory, possibly submission in the first or second round. Casey Kenny Marab, Davalishvili, man, Marab's an animal. I train with him. But I am very impressed with Casey Kenny as well. His last fight against Manny Bermudez, who is, a big 135er, where Casey Kenny's actually a small 135er. I believe he walks around like, 148, 150 tops. Marab, gets up to 160. He's strong. He's a very high volume striker with wrestling. He'll take you down over and over and over. And if he fails at the takedowns, he's going to keep on pressuring you, man. He's like a bully in there. He's all over you. He's in your face. His striking's very awkward. He moves around the cage really awkwardly with, jittery movement and weird feints. And it's hard to know what he's going to do or when he's going to come in at you, but he blitzes at the right times. And it's very tricky stuff, hard to kind of download and know exactly what's coming at you. And Casey Kenny, more of a traditional striker, but he's a great striker. He's a good southpaw. He fights with good volume, and I was really impressed with his fight with Ray Borg. I wasn't quite sure if he won that fight, but it was nonetheless a very competitive fight. And Ray Borg's, had a lot of more experience in the UFC than him and had fought for a title as well. So props to Casey Kenny, especially on that last win against Manny Bermudez, who is now fighting at like 155. I know he's no longer in the UFC, but he was doing good things in his early matches in the UFC, like his first 2 or 3 fights, submitting everybody, a lot of hype behind him. And then Casey Kenny, he did really well in that fight, and out scrambled him on the ground, and it was fighting a much bigger guy. So I'm going to lean towards Marab in this fight. I just think that he might be a little too much for Casey Kenny. I don't think Casey Kenny has fought anyone like Marab. Marab's going to be the bigger, stronger guy in there. And Marab has like the record for, I don't know what, 10 takedowns in one round. I mean, the guy's relentless, and I don't think Casey Kenny's dealt with that kind of relentlessness. So I'm going to lean towards Marab, but I'm going to go decision. I think Marab's going to take his licks in this fight. I think Casey Kenny's going to definitely land some big kicks, land some good punches, but Marab's ultimately going to be able to take him down and out volume him and just out pressure him, put him against the cage, and win by points. Rogerio Bontorin, who I mentioned earlier, is on the card against Ray Borg. You know, Ray Borg looked really good in his last fight, and with the story with his child, I really love to see him win. I want to see him successful. It's one of those things when someone's dealing with trials and tribulations in life and going through hard times. You want to see them come out on top. And in this fight, I'm going to lean towards Borg. He has that good experience, like I said, being in a title fight. He did look good in his last time out. He looked, real sharp. He's such a scrambler, very hard to outposition. And he's one of those guys that is going to get you tired in the fight because he almost welcomes that scrambling, that very fast intensity that, brings on challenges for you and your gas tank throughout the fight. You got to keep up with that pace. It's very hard to deal with. And Ray Borg embraces that. He loves it. He'll put himself in bad positions just to make you tired, just to make you work, and I think that's going to be the telltale of this fight. I think he's going to make Bontorin work. And I think he's going to come out with a decision. I'm going with Ray Borg. Although Bontorin has had, a couple big wins, beating Magomed Biblatov, knocking out Raulian Paiva, who's on this card. And you got to watch out for that. He's got power at flyweight, which is a dangerous thing. We've seen this more and more. The game is evolving, and these flyweights are starting to pack power on their punches and get finishes. So it's been impressive to watch, and I'm happy that the flyweights are still here. And I hope the division opens up. With this new title fight between Joey Benavidez and what's the guy's name? That guy's an animal too. I don't know, his name's slipping up on me, but you know what I'm talking about. I still think Benavidez is going to win that fight and become the champ, but it's exciting to open up things in the division. Um, moving on up. We got Jim Miller, Scott Holtzman. Now, at first glance, I feel like I lean Jim Miller, with the experience, vicious Muay Thai. He's got those elbows, and the thing is about that Lyme disease that he had, was affecting his career and his energy and his output in these fights and his training, being able to prepare correctly. He says he's kind of past that. He's been feeling better than ever. And if that's a sign of good things to come, I mean, I don't know what else would be because Jim Miller was still putting in work, with all that stuff affecting him. And now he says he feels better than ever. He's got good energy again, finally at 100% with his output and training. So he's coming into these fights more prepared than we've seen him in the past, which is dangerous because Miller's a finisher. He's a shark in there. He smells blood, he pounces on you. And Scott Holtzman, though, is a very physically imposing guy for the weight class. And he puts in work, man. He's an athlete. I believe he's a former hockey player. I'm not too sure about that. But, he's done really well in the division, and he showed a lot of potential as well. I think he's going to be the bigger, stronger guy. Although Miller has a little bit of a reach advantage, which is surprising because he's a very, very short guy, I feel like, for 55. Um, Scott Holtzman is coming off a TKO win over Dong Hyun Ma. And then, he had a decision loss to Nick Lentz. And if that's any say, Nick Lentz is a really good fighter, but I think Jim Miller is a little bit above him as far as skill set goes. So, maybe I will lean Jim Miller by decision. I think it's going to be really tough, but I think, he'll be able to outstrike Scott Holtzman and maybe land the more damaging strikes, maybe cut him up a little bit or something like that and kind of sway the judges to his side. But that's a tough fight. That's a very even matchup. Hard to pick. I feel like it'll be decision and it might even be like a split decision. It could go either way. But I go Jim Miller. This fight I'm probably most looking forward to, John Dodson, Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel Wood has a lot of hype behind him. This guy has come in the division and he's really good at striking, but he's also very good at taking the back and submitting guys. He has some couple rear naked choke wins. Let's see his record here. Yeah, he submitted Quinones, who's fighting Sean O'Malley. And, that's not the biggest win, so you really can't say too much about that. And, he's been out for a while too, I believe, Nathaniel Wood. He's taken a little bit of a layoff, which might be to his detriment because John Dodson's been in there with Rivera. He went the distance with Peter Yan. That says a lot. And Dodson has a lot of experience as well in the UFC. And I feel like he's well trained at Jackson's. One of the most frustrating guys to fight, probably style-wise, as far as, his jittery in and outness, his movement. He runs around. He's in and out, darting at you. He's got that fast left hand. He's also got power at 135. Not the biggest guy, but he's short, stocky, and he packs a punch, So, I really am kind of leaning towards Dodson in this fight. I feel like he's just so tough to deal with, and because of how long Nathaniel Wood's been out, it might play a factor in this fight. You don't really see John Dodson controlled ever. You don't see him taken down and get his back taken and be in a position where he's stuck. You rarely ever see that with Dodson. And I feel like Nathaniel Wood likes to control guys, likes to kind of take his time, be patient, get positions. His striking's really good, really technical. He keeps his hands up really well. But John Dodson's faster. I believe he has a little bit more power. And I think he'll land the more significant strikes. I think he'll be in and out. I think Nathaniel Wood's going to get frustrated, having trouble reaching him, touching him, and getting any takedowns or anything like that. So I go John Dodson by decision. The coffee's good, man. This coffee's good. Boom, baby. Tim Means, Daniel Rodriguez. Man, I love watching Tim Means fight the Dirty Bird, baby. He's fucking awesome, He's one of those guys that he just always puts on an exciting fight. Veteran in the cage, hard to deal with, I believe he's coming off that TKO victory over, was it Thiago Alves? Was that his last fight? I know Tim Means was dealing with that supplement issue too, which was unfortunate. But nonetheless, he's back and actually, yeah, submitted. Oh, submitted. Yeah, yeah, dropped Thiago Alves. Then he submitted him with that guillotine. It was nasty. But he's lost to Nico Price, who there's no shame in that. That guy's an animal. He's TKOing people from his back with up kicks. So he's a beast. But yeah, I don't know much about Daniel Rodriguez. I'm not gonna lie, but I gotta go with Tim Means. I think he's gonna get a TKO. I believe Daniel Rodriguez is more of a newcomer coming in, and Tim Means has so much experience in the cage fighting high level guys. He's fast, he's long, he's got very crisp striking, and he's so confident in there. That's another thing. This guy's not afraid to get in there and get mean. No pun intended, but he's vicious, and he's gonna try to brutalize you and hurt you in there. So Tim Means TKO second round. Boom. Main card time. Brock Weaver, Rodrigo Vargas. Oh no, we got Lando Venata versus Yancy Medeiros. Yeah, Yancy Medeiros, he had a good performance with Gregor Gillespie. He just got out wrestled really, which is almost everybody except for Kevin Lee. But yeah, Yancy Medeiros going to be the bigger guy. Lando Venata's kind of been up and down, inconsistent, but he's very exciting to watch fight. He's a really flashy guy, throws spinning kicks, throws crazy techniques up there. He's tricky, but he's not the biggest guy for lightweight either. He seems a lot smaller than a lot of these guys. And Yancy Medeiros has fought at 170. He's fought guys like Cowboy Cerrone. He's fought guys like I think he fought Cowboy Oliveira too. He's had some exciting fights at welterweight. So being at lightweight, coming off that loss to Gregor, Lando Venata is definitely not a Gregor Gillespie. He's not going to impose that kind of wrestling style on you. He's more of a striker who's willing to get in there and get flashy and almost take damage to give damage. And I feel like Yancy Medeiros is going to have a little bit more power, having fought up at welterweight, and going to be able to touch him up a little bit more. I'm going to go with Yancy Medeiros by decision. Brock Weaver finally making his UFC debut off the Contender Series. Had that funny post-fight interview fighting Rodrigo Vargas. I'm going to go quick and easy with this one. Brock Weaver, just because I like the style he's got. I like the accent. I like his personality. He's definitely one of those guys that has that it factor. I think he's going to do big things in the UFC. Brock Weaver by decision. Now we got Montana De La Rosa, the wife of Mark De La Rosa, is fighting Mara Romero Boyela. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'm going to lean towards Mara Romero by decision. I think she's going to get the job done. Could I tell you why? I have no fucking idea because I don't really know much about it. But hey, quick picks. Devin Clark, Daquan Townsend. I'm impressed with both of these guys, but I gotta say, man, Devin Clark's athleticism for light heavyweight is very impressive. Also, I believe he trains with John Jones, for championship fights. So that's a big feather in your cap to have going into fights, knowing that you're training with the best of the best. One of the best to ever do it. Going in there. So got to give props to Devin Clark for, being at the right place, being at Jackson Wing, training with the best of the best. I got to lean towards him just because of that. I know he has less fights, 14 fights, 10-4. Daquan Townsend, I think he has less UFC fights, so he's at 21-10. So he has more experience altogether, but less UFC experience. And, Devin Clark is powerful. He's explosive. He's athletic. And I think he's just going to have that edge over Townsend in those areas. So I'm going Devin Clark, and I'll go by a finish later in the third round. Diego Sanchez, Michael Pereira. We saw Michael Pereira, he lost that fight. His last fight, he's a huge guy for welterweight. Diego is one of those guys that's, trying to show that David versus Goliath attitude. No more cutting weight for Diego. He seems healthier. He seems more focused. He seems confident. This is a tough test, man. If Michel Pereira made any improvements from that last fight and, is doing the weight cut safely and getting his body right for welterweight, then I could see him being a hard fight for Diego Sanchez. Although Diego Sanchez hung in there with Mike Chiesa, and Chiesa's, he's doing big things at welterweight. I just think Michel Pereira is a very freaky athletic guy who packs a lot of power. I just hope he doesn't do all those crazy flips. That expenditure of energy is just not going to play to his benefit. And a guy like Diego Sanchez, who's been in there with the best of the best, he's a veteran of the game, an OG of the game. He's smart, man. He's not going to He's not going to let you, do these tricky things to him and get it off. Diego's going to put on a pace on this guy. And it's going to be a matter of, is Michel Pereira improved from that last fight? Did he learn anything from gassing out and having nothing to give? Because Diego's going to come in there fresh, healthy, no weight cut, no drainage. And Michel Pereira is a huge guy who's probably going to be cutting at least 20 pounds, maybe even more. And you got to imagine he's still dealing with, figuring himself out at welterweight. Maybe we see him move up to middleweight at some point. If this, if he loses this fight to Diego, we could probably see that happen. I'm going to go with Diego just to follow that OG status. I love Diego. Crack the coconut, right? Come on now. Best coach in the game. Diego Sanchez by decision. Tough, though. Depends on which Michel Pereira shows up. I got Diego by decision. Corey Anderson, Jan Blachowicz. We got the main event crack-a-lack in here. I was really impressed with Corey Anderson with his last fight with Johnny Walker. He had that chip on his shoulder. He was pissed off at the promotion. He was like, listen, I'm coming in here to shut everybody up. He was hype after that win. Johnny Walker had so much hype, and he just stole all of that. And now he's fighting Jan Blachowicz, who has, been tearing through the division himself. But I think if you're talking business here, and the UFC is looking at this fight like, who do we want to win? With that last fight with Reyes, how impressive he fought against John Jones, the display of athleticism and the heart and being able to go 5 rounds like that with John Jones, and I thought won the fight, 3 rounds to 2. You got to do something crazy in this fight to sway the UFC to want you to be the next guy to fight John Jones and not give that rematch to Reyes. Now, if Corey Anderson beats Jan Blachowicz like he did Johnny Walker, finishes him in impressive fashion with a knockout, I could see them going, the Jones-Anderson route, because they had some beef. They had a little stuff to say. Jones said he was looking forward to fight Anderson at some point. So if I'm Anderson, I'm coming in to kill on this fight, and I got to get a finish. I got to put on a performance. There's a lot of pressure with that, You don't want to win a decision, squeak it out, just barely win, get on the judges' scorecards and edge out a decision and have the UFC be like, well, that wasn't good enough. We're going to go with the rematch, Jones versus Reyes. And now you're sitting out and you're waiting. Do I defend my number 1 contendership? Do I wait, for the next chance up? It's one of those shitty positions where a lot of guys are, Aljamain's there, Peter Yan's there. You just don't know what the UFC is going to do with that title fight, and you got to make sure you seal the deal. So I think Anderson's going to have that chip on his shoulder again, and I think he's going to come out guns blazing. I think he's going to put it on Yan. I think he's a better wrestler. I think both of them have similar amount of power on the feet. Jan Blachowicz has put guys out too, and he's good off his back too. He has Kimura traps. He has some good sweeps, good positioning. I just lean more towards Anderson. I think he's just a more seasoned guy and the more well-rounded guy. I think his wrestling is going to be able to cause, Jan Blachowicz to get a little tired maybe. But although I saw Jan was training at altitude, so that could help him as far as his cardio goes in this fight. But Corey Anderson's always been known for good cardio, so I can't imagine that Jan catches up that quickly to him in that aspect. I'm leaning towards Corey Anderson. I think he's going to have a really tough time finishing Jan Blachowicz. I think it's going to be a very evenly matched up fight. It's going to be back and forth. Both are going to take their damage, and I just think Corey Anderson's going to squeak it out. I think he's going to get a decision, and we'll see what happens from there, man. It's tough to see them leaning towards Anderson if he wins a decision, but I got him by decision. That's UFC Rio Rancho for you. Question section. Rio Rancho from Bull Roar MMA podcast. Rio Rancho is 1 mile above sea level. How much does this affect strategies, and what style of wrestling BJJ striking does it favor? Well, as far as cardio goes, it's way easier to strike than it is to out wrestle someone and constantly go for takedowns, get ups, scramble, jujitsu, grappling. That's the hardest shit. That tires you out. You never know. If it's in someone's head and they think, hey, I want to take my time, it could slow down the pace of a fight, the style that a guy fights. If he usually has a higher output, maybe he takes his time more. Maybe he uses more footwork, try to utilize his energy a little bit differently. The expenditure of energy is something that you learn over time. No one could teach you how to do that, but you got to utilize that in the cage. If you're fighting a guy that breaks, you want to be able to put it on that guy and break him and then get the finish. it's a beautiful feeling to feel a guy fade and know that you haven't broken. But if you're at altitude and you're starting to question yourself, maybe you want to move a little bit more, stick that jab out, take your time, throw less volume, but you still want to win. So you got to figure that out. But that's a good question. Moving to Twitter. I think we had a couple questions on Twitter as well for the boom breakdown here. What do we got? We got Groovy Lando versus Medeiros should just get fight of the night right now. That's from B High on Twitter. Yeah, man, that definitely has big potential for fight of the night for sure with those styles. Full Contact Radio, some low key bangers on this card. Medeiros, Lando, Casey Kenny, Marab, Dodson, Wood. Who is your favorite for fight of the night? I'm going with Venata Medeiros. Also, what is your favorite old school instrumental to spit to? There's so many instrumentals. I'll start with that. I don't really have one favorite. There's just too many. But as far as fight of the night goes, I think potentially Marab and Casey Kenny, two guys that are looking to make a statement. Two guys that want to keep their winning ways going. Two guys that are aggressive. Two guys that throw very high volume. I think they have potential, but so does Lando Medeiros. Hard to pick, but I'll go with Marab and Casey Kenny just to differ. We got Aaron Water Show on Twitter. Boom, I'm your biggest fan, bro. Who do you think is most likely to get a finish in these fights? I think that Ray Borg could get a finish. I think that John Dodson would probably go decision. Jan Blachowicz Anderson probably goes decision. I think Devin Clark has a big potential for a finish. That's for sure. Yeah, Devin Clark. I think he has probably the biggest potential. Or Tim Means. He's a finisher. He's a shark. It looks like that is it for Twitter. So that's it, boys. Thank you for tuning in to the Boom Breakdown. Please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. Really appreciate it. Trying to keep that content kicking for you guys. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter, Brian Boom 135. Well, stay tuned, man. The next fight, the next contract, we're gonna have some news for you soon. Boom, baby.